Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Joe Truing. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. This week, we help out a homeowner that's got a little paint problem where she painted a beautiful piece of furniture white, but now it's starting to turn yellow. What can she do? We try to help her out with that. A little frustration on that caller, Joe.
Yeah, you don't want to tell a caller, well, the first thing you have to do is strip it back down to bare wood. Like, oh, well, thanks. Like, what can I do besides that? So we'll see if we can help her out. We also have a caller that has a really interesting project. She has a kitchen island that she wants to dress up a little bit with board and batten siding, for lack of a better word, on the front of this. And she's a little concerned about, like, what size should she make the boards and the battens? So we'll help her out with some design tips.
And when you think about board and batten, you can think of it as being a very rustic look, but that really is determined by the smoothness of the wood, because you can go with a nice, smooth trim wood and maybe downsize just a little bit, and it has a very good look to it without it looking like an old farmhouse or something. But yeah, I think she's got a great idea on that. Also, if you have a yard, and a lot of people have different building lots that have a bit of a slope to them, and they get a little frustrated because, you'd kind of like a nice flat area for entertaining and that kind of thing. Well, terracing a yard a little at a time is a very practical hardscaping project for your house, and we'll give one of our homeowners here a few tips on how to approach that without killing the back or breaking the bank, so we can be able to take care of that.
And I've got a simple solution how to neatly and expertly spray paint small items. And I'm talking about like fasteners and hardware items, latches and hinges, that sort of thing. And it's a way to do it neatly and not have paint spray all over the place.
I'll tell you what, Joe and I appreciate you spending some time with us here on the podcast. We really enjoy it. So let's get started. Let's see if we can help Christy in Georgia, who's contemplating a little project in her kitchen. Christy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Danny.
I love this idea that you're
How
talking
about. Mr. Joe? I'm never called Mr. Joe.
Oh, hey, Mr. Joe.
Hi, Miss Christy.
I love this idea, talking about putting board and batten on an island bar area in your kitchen. I really like that. More and more people are using board and batten styling inside their homes, on walls for accents, on all kinds of things. But tell us and explain to us what your idea is here.
Well, I have this bar island, and I want to zhuzh it up a little bit. I just want to give it a little extra love to it.
Gotcha.
And I'm now at the point where I don't know exactly how big the boxes should be, and it's like an obtuse kind of angle, and so one side is longer than the other. So I don't know like how many boxes exactly should be around the bar.
Okay, all right, and on the board and batten styling, so you're talking about running a board around the bottom. And by the way, Christy sent some great pictures here for us to look at. And around the bottom of the bar, I see you have a traditional piece of colonial base molding. So you're talking about taking that molding off and replacing it with like a 1x4 or 1x3.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And then running the vertical battens on top of that.
Correct.
Okay. But by the way, Joe, I don't know if you're seeing in the picture here.
I'm looking at these photographs as we speak.
The Basset Hound there really looks bored out of his mind, doesn't he? You see what I'm talking about?
He's like, Christy, when are you going to spruce up this island?
Yeah, he's really contemplating that. What's your dog's name?
That is Earl. We have Merle and Earl, the redneck hounds, and he was not moving.
Yeah, Earl looks a little bored here. He needs a little spice in his life. So
that's Mr. Earl to you, Dan.
I think some board and batten there will make him feel a lot better. So anyway, I couldn't help but mention that. Well, I'll tell you what you're talking about is the spacing and so forth, and that is such a personal preference. And what I would actually do is consider taking some pieces of wood, and most of the time the battens that you're going to use would be anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 inches. Probably being just a bar area interior, I would suggest going with 1.5 wide battens. And I would just take some duct tape and or some double stick tape, and I would just stick them up there on 12-inch centers, or stick them up there on 16-inch centers, and just look at, because one's going to be a lot busier than the other. I suspect you'll end up wanting the 12-inch centers, or somewhere, any variety of that. You can go 13, 14, 15, whatever. But the thing that you'll want to do is on those corners, which is probably going to be a 22.5-degree angle, you will, those two battens that you put there, you'll actually need to, or what I would advise is to rip a long angle cut on that so that they come to a really nice point. That would require a careful use of a circular saw, or even better, using a table saw to do it. And most likely you would take care of those corners with those two outside pieces, and then you would want to space evenly on the front of the bars. So that might kind of dictate whether you go 16-inch centers, 12-inch centers, or some variation of that. And then just tuck it right up underneath the overhang that you have on your granite countertop. And that's about as simple as it is, but I believe it will create just a really nice look there, especially compared to just regular drywall.
That sounds great. Well, you answered my question. I appreciate it so much.
Well, send us a picture when you get it done, because I think others would be very interested in seeing the before and after of this. We have the befores. A great idea here that you have.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, you as well, Christy. Thank you very much. Joe, what do you think on something like that? When you look at the pictures of this, and just so that our listeners can understand, it's just basically a bar area that extends out, has a sink on it, countertop overhang, bar stools, but just plain drywall. I'll tell you one thing about putting something more durable like board and batten on this, whether she puts the wood up or just put batten, it'll protect that drywall a little bit, because you get kids or anybody there and their toes of the shoes hitting that,
right,
going to bang that drywall up pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially here, because she has an overhanging countertop and there are stools there, so it's almost impossible not to kick it. The spacing of board and batten is typically dependent on the size and scale of whatever you're putting it on, right? If it's a big garage or shed, you can use wider boards and wider battens. But for something like this, I think, as you said, 1.5 inch wide for the battens would be plenty. And you also would want them thinner too. I would think no more than 1/4 inch. And then for the boards, it'd be 4 or 5 inches, and space them for it. She didn't even talk about the boards. She was just talking about the battens. I assume she wants to put boards and battens. So I would put the boards no more than 4 or 5 inches, make them 4 or 5 inches wide, overlap them with the 1.5 inch wide battens, and I think that would look great.
Yeah, and actually could put plywood there, whether it was a smooth, which I assume she would want, or a more rough sawn type look. Could put plywood around there and then use the battens for that same look. But either way, great way not only to add a nice focal point there, but to make it a little more durable. Right now, we'll visit Aisha, that's joining us from Michigan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danny.
All right. Well, let's tell us what's happening here. You've doing a little painting, but it's not turning out like you like. Explain to us.
Well, about maybe 8 years ago, shortly after my mom passed away, and I feel it's important to state that because my mom taught me how to sew. And so I wanted to create a extension to my sewing table that would give me more space to hold my projects and also to hold my machine. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of mapped out how I wanted this table to be designed, went to buy the MDF to construct it. As an homage to my mom, I painted it white, and I decorated it with imagery and phrasing in French language because my mother was French. And I wanted to protect it by putting a polyurethane coating over it. About maybe 2 to 3 months after I completed it and started using it, I noticed that certain areas of the tabletop, it experienced some significant yellowing. It wasn't throughout the entire surface, but I noticed certain things that I would sit on top of it, like a lazy Susan to hold the tools that I need to have, easily accessible. the tabletop where the Lazy Susan sat, there was some yellowing there. And so my question is, I want to redo the surface because, like I said, this was done in 2011. I want to redo it, but I want to use a product or figure out what is the best thing to put on top of it to make certain that I don't have the same type of problem again.
Yeah, that's a shame when you do work so hard on it. Sound like a great project. Sound like a great honor that you're paying to your mom on that. It just sounds like a very neat looking piece of furniture there. I'll tell you, a lot of times, when you talked about the little Lazy Susan there, you're talking about some of the yellowing that your experience was under that. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, what do you think on that? Because I know one time I used an exterior type of paint, which I thought was a great idea, that I used on the inside on some cabinets, and it ended up yellowing very badly because it was not exposed to the sun, whereas so many people think about when it's exposed to the sun. What do you think? What do you think's happening on this particular sewing table?
Yeah, Aisha, let me ask you first. Did you use oil-based polyurethane or water-based? Do you remember?
Water-based.
Water-based. Okay, good. Because oil-based polyurethane, when you said earlier that you've heard people complaining about polyurethane yellowing, the oil-based polyurethane will definitely yellow. But the water-based typically dries crystal clear. And how many coats did you put on?
Well, because the decoupage is there, I put on maybe a good 5 coats because I wanted to make certain the edging of the decoupage image that, there was no possibility of it lifting or getting caught on something and distorting. Okay,
well, I can tell you 5 coats is a lot of coats.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be tap dancing and bowling I've never heard of more than 2 or 3 coats. So 5 coats, and obviously the more layers of anything, the more chance of there being some color distortion, and that might be part of it. Now that doesn't explain why under the Lazy Susan it's yellow and every place else is not. But as far as refinishing it, if you have to remove 5 layers of polyurethane, I'm not sure how you could do that without damaging the decoupage or anything else you have underneath there. But I think there might be, between the paint, the decoupage, and the 5 layers of polyurethane, I'm not that surprised that there isn't some shading going on. But again, I can't really say why it's only underneath surfaces that have been covered. By a Lazy Susan or something else. Have you moved the Lazy Susan to see if the yellowing fades a little and goes back to being crystal clear?
No, not particularly. But there were other things that were sitting on the surface where I noticed the yellowing, and I have moved those things, and it doesn't seem to come back. So it feels like the yellowing is in place. Yeah. And let me also say, I'm not opposed to totally redoing the surface. So I know, if I were to go and strip things off, I know that all the work that I did in the years past is going to be gone. But I'm okay with that. I want to know what should I do going forward to make certain that the surface is protected, but that is still going to look as beautiful and pristine as it did when I first finished it.
I just wonder if, lightly sanding it, maybe with like 200 grit paper, and just lightly sanding it and wiping it clean and giving it a day or two and look at it, it might be just that top layer that's really causing the problem, and you might be able to eliminate the yellow on that, and then you're able to, recoat it again and make sure that you put a nice thin coat on it using a China bristle brush and so forth. But that should, I would try that first before you got too drastic with eliminating any of the decoupage and so forth, and give that a try. Just real, like 200 grit paper, give it a try and see if that doesn't cut it down for you.
Well, that's a great idea. I will absolutely do that.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Best of luck. And again, our compliments on what sounds like a great, great project there. That's passion in home improvement when you're able to take care of a few things like that. And, especially with her story, which was kind of cool. Her mom teaching her how to sew. And each time she sits down, then she goes back to that time a little bit. That's a pretty cool personal thing.
Yeah, my mom's a great sewer, and she learned from her mom. So,
we're
passing it down.
And you learned from her. That's great.
Yeah, I did. I learned how to ask my mom to sew stuff.
And it is time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. String trimmer, edger, pole saw, Hedge trimmer? Wow, sounds like I'm describing the back of a professional landscaper's truck. Well, actually, these are all the attachments that go along with Milwaukee's Quick Lock system. Handle the big jobs on your own with this arsenal of 18-volt lithium-ion powered lawn care tools. The power head string trimmer attachment can easily be swapped out with another tool, and the motor is positioned in the back to provide the best combination of power, balance, and maneuverability. For more information on Milwaukee's Quick Lock lawn care tools, log on to HomeDepot.com. That's the way to do it these days.
That sounds pretty convenient and versatile.
Absolutely. Let's see. So string trimmer, of course, you use that all the time. Edger, to be able to really clean up along there. Pole saw. Boy, you get a pole saw and you're able to.
I love my pole saw.
Oh, yeah, to trim those limbs up high like that. And then, of course, hedge trimmer. Yeah, that is a whole truckload of tools there. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Right now, we're going to Tennessee to talk with Ashley. Ashley, I know you have a question for us, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Danny. How are you doing?
Hey, things are going great. I understand you're trying to do a little landscaping in your backyard.
Yeah, I was just a little concerned about working around the deck since it's on a slope and just wasn't sure about adding gravel underneath there and if that would be how that would affect the deck since it is kind of on a slope and on the second story.
Sure. Well, looking at the pictures here, and appreciate you sending those, you have a raised deck. Looks like it's about 9 or 10 foot off the ground, and you do have quite a slope there. But I'll tell you what, using the stackable blocks, the retaining wall blocks that you just see everywhere now, both residential and commercial. It's something that you can do kind of a step at a time. One of the first things when I saw the looking at the photos here, I could see going right outside where your posts are in the ground, and then putting a retaining wall directly under or just outside the footprint of your deck. And you got some digging to do there. You'll have a little digging. All of that dirt you can put inside and bring that retaining wall up. I would say probably maybe 16 or 18 inches. And that will allow you to pretty much level off that area under the deck. So you've got a nice little plateau there. Level it off. Add the gravel in there that you had mentioned, which is a great thing to put under a deck since that water pours through there. You actually would have a nice, fairly level area there that could be an area that you can get out of the sun, that a nice little seating area. It wouldn't be waterproof, but it'd be a nice seating area for that. And then you could actually go down the slope a bit and do that again if you wanted to terrace another area there. And this material's readily available, it's easy to use, but it is fairly heavy, in having to move the blocks around. But I think that would look fantastic.
Okay, great.
And all of that material is readily available. Our friends at Pavestone, that's part of the Quick Creek companies, they keep it in stock at just about every Home Depot around the country. And you could go to pavestone.com and see some of their ideas for the retaining walls. But I think you'll find that that's a great solution to it and completely change the look of your yard. And the good thing about it, you can do a little at a time. You don't have to do it all at one time.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say. I wanted something that I could just kind of do, little by little.
Yeah, just do it a little bit at a time, and but it is a little bit of shovel work there because you are talking about taking dirt from one area that's higher and putting it in an area that's lower, and that kind of thing. But it's still a little at a time, and you'll be very happy with your backyard, I believe.
All right, perfect.
Well, good.
Well, thank you.
Our pleasure. If we can help you in the future, let us know, Ashley. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.
You too. Appreciate it.
We really do appreciate hearing from all of our listeners. We get some wonderful comments, and so many times we'll get someone that calls on the hotline or they'll send us an email and they'll say, I love your simple solutions each and every week, because it is just that little bit of information that you can use around your home. Joe has another one for us right now.
All right, Danny, I love using spray paint. I have a whole plastic tub full. I must have 25 cans of spray paint. I use it all the time. And why not? It's quick and easy to apply. It dries really quickly. And it's particularly great for spray painting small items. We're talking hardware items, fasteners like the heads of screws or nails, perhaps even hooks and hinges, anything like that. So, but here's how to do it neatly and get the whole thing spray painted so you don't have to paint one side and the other side. And first get a cardboard box, an empty cardboard box that you can use just to catch the overspray. Set it on a workbench, put down some paper or plastic or something under it, and then take, if there are screws or nails or something like that, anything you can stick into a piece of cardboard, you get a separate piece of cardboard, just stick them in, hold it up in front of the box, and just spray paint it. And then set it off to the side to dry. But if you're doing like hinges, latches, braces, any kind of metal brace, brackets of some sort, would take a piece of clothes hanger, snip off about a 12-inch long piece of wire clothes hanger, bend a little hook on it, and then you just hook it through one of the holes on the piece of hardware, and then spray paint it again, hold it up in front of the box. And this way you can spray the back, the sides, the end, you get the whole thing. And then, okay, so now you have this thing hanging from a hook and it's wet. What do you do with it? What I did in the shop is I put up a chain overhead, just a lightweight decorative chain overhead on the ceiling between the joists. And I just take the wire and hook it on there. And just hang there, and it dries within 5 minutes. It's dry. But then you get another piece of wire, and you continue to paint these. So that's a simple solution: how to spray paint small pieces of hardware.
Yeah, there you go. Another good, simple solution from my buddy Joe Truini, and you can see a lot more, almost 500 of them, by going to todayshomeowner.com/simple solutions. Joe, sometimes it's do as I say, not as I do. Yesterday, I made a big error when you're talking about spray painting. We're remodeling this, doing a light remodeling on this little garage to turn it into a game room.
Right, yeah.
The garage door tracks were, up there. They're dusty and they just didn't seem to fit in. The ceiling was white. I said, I'm going to slip out here and I'm going to spray these darn things. So I slipped out there and wiped them down, and I'm spraying, not really thinking. I had a drop cloth here and there, but not enough. This stuff drifted all over, got on countertops. And, there's this little $40,000 camera that's sitting over on the side that we taped the show with. Yeah, it got a little on it, too.
You got paint on it?
Yeah, a little. I mean, it was on the other side of the room. How did it make it all the way over there? Darn it. And so when the guys, and the guys were still taking lunch, when they came back, it was a frenzy of cleaning. And even though it's my equipment, they gave me a dirty look for doing that. So,
well, good thing you're the one that did it. It wasn't somebody else.
Oh, I know it. Be careful on the overspray, folks. It does not make any friends in the crew there. Now it's time for our podcast question of the week. And if you would like to send us a question, all you have to do is go to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. This one comes from Wisconsin. Marianne asked, hello, how do you repair chips out of baseboards? This is from a 100-year-old home with dark stain. Also, how do you remove grime from hand railing with the same dark stain? I really enjoy your podcast and love taking on small repairs. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, you're talking about a 100-year-old house with dark stain, and if you have chips in it, that's just about impossible. Depending on
if it was painted,
yeah,
very easy.
Very easy. But the only thing I think about on something like that, the little jars of colored putty, to go to the paint store, home center, and buy 2 or 3 of them. They're not very expensive, but it's hard to look and match exactly what you have. Then just take your time, make sure you have adequate lighting on the little area that you're repairing, and you might just hit it lucky by the first one you put on there is not going to make that chip disappear, but it's probably going to minimize the look of it considerably, because so many times a chip really shows up because it's showing the raw wood behind it. So if you have something that's fairly close in color to that stain, then that works out pretty well. Again, as Joe said, if it was painted, then you could fill that, sand it, and then paint it. But hopefully you can find a dark stain and or a dark putty that will match that dark stain. A lot of challenges on that. What do you think about this next part? How do you remove grime from hand railing with the same dark stain? That's starts with some deep cleaning, but that's all of that hand grease and oil and everything else that you have on almost all handrails.
Yeah. Well, I think you don't want to do anything that's going to remove the stain or the finish, or you just want to clean it first, and then you can at least evaluate what the next step is, if anything. So, first thing I'd try is just a scouring sponge, like one of those Scotch-Brite pad or sponge like that, dip it into Murphy oil soap and just try that. That might clean it up. And then there was an all-purpose homemade cleanser that we've mentioned on air a few times that I have 2 bottles filled. I have one upstairs, one downstairs. I use it all the time. It works great. And it might work on this. And it's in a 1 quart spray bottle. You mix 1 cup of rubbing alcohol and 2/3 cup of white vinegar. Then you fill up the bottle, top it off with some water. And I've found that cleans almost anything. I've not tried it on handrails, but you might want to try that as well.
Yeah, that's some good suggestions there. If you would like to send us a question, all you have to do is go to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. We really appreciate you being with us on the podcast each and every week, and we would love for you to subscribe wherever you're accessing the podcast. Subscribe so that you get our podcast every week, and also rate and review. We want to make sure that we're able to be available to a lot more listeners each and every week. So make sure you spend a little time and do that. We would certainly appreciate it. That pretty much wraps up our podcast for this week. You can find out more information anytime by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. I'm Danny Lipford along with Joe Truini. Thanks again for being with us on this podcast.